Suffering from dry, tired, irritated eyes? Don't let dry eyes win. Use Sustain Pro. It hydrates, restores, and protects dry eyes for up to 12 hours. Sustain Pro. Triple action dry eye relief.
Your team just added its 67th AI tool, and also your 67th security blind spot. The good news? The Vanta agent works like a GRC engineer in the background, finding every app your team uses, scoring the risk, and drafting fixes for you. Vanta is the platform used by over 16,000 fast-moving companies like Ramp, Cursor, and Harvey, who are shaping the future with AI and staying ahead of AI risk. Get started at Vanta.com.
Hello, and welcome to Immigrantly, a podcast that's breaking down stereotypes about the immigrant identity one episode at a time. I'm Saadia Khan. Today's conversation may make some people flinch. Others will shake their heads in disbelief, and some of you will nod along because you've been waiting for someone to just say it. The topic? It's tense. But the reality is painfully simple. A genocide has taken place in Gaza. That's not just my opinion. In September of last year, the UN's own Commission of Inquiry concluded that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. And here's the part that should unsettle all of us. There is a so-called ceasefire now. It was announced in October 2025, and yet, since that ceasefire, more than 1,100 Palestinians have been killed. Gazans are still dying. There is hunger, there is uncertainty, there is death that looms over every tent, every water line, every school. That is no longer a school. So today I am talking to someone who knows this situation far better than most of us ever will. Mara Kronenfeld is the CEO of UNRWA USA, the American nonprofit that supports the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. She's a Fulbright scholar who's lived and worked in Syria. She speaks Arabic. She has spent more than 2 decades working in the Middle East, and this is where it gets interesting for a show like ours. She is a Jewish American woman, the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor, leading an organization that supports Palestinian refugees at a moment when doing that work gets you called every name in the book. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Welcome to Immigrantly, Mara. So excited to have you on this warm, sunny summer day.
Thank you, Saadia. It's my pleasure to be here.
So, Mara, I have been thinking about where I'll start my interview since you and I had a pre-interview conversation. And my first thought was we'll start at UNRWA. But then I was like, no, we're not going to start there. In fact, we'll start where I normally start with a lot of my guests. Take me back to your life story before UNRWA, before Syria. Who raised you? What did they teach you about who deserved your empathy?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. How I was brought up and the stories that I heard in my life really formed who I am today, the work that I do, what I stand for, and that moral compass, that moral backbone that helps direct me in difficult times, in times of immense pressure, which despite my smile, this is one of those times. So in my world, unless you have that firm backbone of who you are and where you came from and what you believe, you can easily be swayed by the powers all around you, especially when they're strong and pretty powerful and pretty dogmatic and also pretty wrong. So, yeah, I was raised in Southern California, definitely a California person. I've somehow have an accent which has come from just being around, traveling a lot and being around Arabic speakers, including my husband. So I start to have an accent, but I'm a Valley girl from SoCal, 100%.
I would not have guessed that, Mara. I was thinking East Coast, but sunny California.
Yeah, it's part of my disposition to really be open and friendly when I can be. But I was born to parents who really believed in exploring the world, in knowing things that were happening outside of our town of Riverside, California. My dad is an anthropologist. My mom is the daughter of immigrants. And I think particularly the story of my grandfather, who was very close to me when he was alive, an idol for me, someone who I looked up to, and still his memory is part of my daily life. My grandfather escaped Nazi Germany. His sister and his sister's family were murdered there. And he came to this country, to New York City, as a 15-year-old in about 1934 and met my grandmother, got married. They had my mom, and then eventually I was born. And in our relationship, and just in his outlook on life, he always said, never again. He experienced the worst of humanity and he said, never again. Like many Jewish immigrants have said in the US. And for him and for many, unfortunately not for all, never again meant for anybody, not just the Jewish people, but for any individual, any group of individuals who are being persecuted and brutalized because of where they happen to be born, the faith they happen to hold dear, for what ethnicity they are. He said, never again. And that ethos really has been, again, part of that moral compass that I was raised with. And he happened to be like the least prejudicial person on earth. So he was what I want to be in my best of moments, which is open and caring and loving to all. And he had the most beautiful smile, most beautiful mustache. And then my parents really raised me, particularly my dad, to question authority, to not take received wisdom as truth. And I always say that my dad benefited, so to speak, from this teaching in that I questioned him a lot. So he paid for this advice. But that was part of what he wanted me to come to understand, that even a parent may have ideas, but they may not be necessarily right. And that my job in this world is to form my own opinions. And ideally, of course, form those on the basis of objective reality, but also of compassion and understanding, not just my experience, but the experience of others. So that was really part of the ethos with which I was raised. And then finally, my mom led with unconditional love. That I love you, Mara, no matter what happens, no matter what you do, no matter what people say about you. And that love that is at an atomic level is what gives me the bravery I need to continue to fight for what's right.
Mara, thank you for sharing that story. And it is such a powerful background narrative, right? People that I have sat down with, a lot of my guests, those who I am impressed with the most have stories around how they were raised. And when they talk about their parents, I can see a through line of why they are the way they are. And the way you define your grandfather, and this is something that you and I have in common because I adored my maternal grandfather. He was my idol. He passed away when I was only 19. And I remember the next day waking up and thinking, the world has changed forever for me. That darkness loomed over for so many years for me. So I can see how, when you talk about your grandfather, you do it with such endearing love. But you are Jewish, and there is a script people expect you to follow, that supporting Israel's government is part of the package of Jewish identity. When did you first realize you were going to deviate from that script? And did it cost you?
Even in my family of questioning authority and forming your own opinions and seeing the world beyond your local setting, I grew up with the mythology that many young Jewish people grew up with, that Israel was exclusively defensive in every single war, that the Israeli army was a moral army, that somehow it had managed to be moral more than any other army in the world. And I think that many Jewish people grew up with that mythology, and many of us have started to question that mythology when we started to read, when we went to college, when we traveled outside of the country. And for me, the moment when I went to college and I was taking a class on the history of Israel, at the very same time I was taking a class on the Middle East, and they were both taught by Jewish professors. And one was extolling the virtues of the Israeli army. One was explaining information or sharing information about the Middle East region that I had no knowledge of heretofore. Basically breaking down Orientalist notions, racist notions of what the Middle East, what the Arab world, what the Muslim world, broadly speaking.
I'm almost scared to ask you which college.
It was Stanford.
Great college, though.
Yes, but the person who was breaking down this mythology happened to be Jewish, born in Israel, and had started to reject or question the mythology he'd been raised with himself. So learning that moment, I remember going into this class, and even I argued with him in the beginning. And this, by the way, this professor has influenced a generation. His name is Joel Bainan. And I told him he was my mentor. He's why I'm doing, in many respects, what I do today. It was one of those moments, those shocking moments where you think you know a lot. You learn in that moment everything you don't know. Those moments, and I later can talk at different moments in my life when I was floored, almost to the point of dropping to the floor with the shock of what I thought I knew, but I didn't know. So part of what is so essential in this journey for me of just life and doing all this work is the humility to know that I just don't know a lot. So anyway, that was really part of my journey. And then finally living in the region, living in Syria for 2 years, living in Egypt, living in Morocco, and coming with all this mythology in my mind again about what the Arab and Muslim world was like, and just being utterly wrong. And finding the warmth and hospitality and the way I was treated was nothing like I was led to believe.
Mara, what took you to Syria?
So I first got to travel to the region when I graduated college. I was in Egypt for a year, working at American University in Cairo. Then I came back, got my master's in Middle East Studies, and then I got a Fulbright scholarship to Syria. So actually went there in 2001. I was supposed to get on a plane on September 13th, 2001. Obviously did not get on that plane because of September 11th. When the buildings came down, my parents said, "You're not going." My dad luckily said, "Syria has nothing to do with this. This is separate." It was my decision to make. I decided to go. Went September 28th, and spent 2 years there as a Fulbright scholar with funding from the US government, doing some research initially, and then improving my Arabic, actually at the French Institute of Damascus. And Syria was just one of those places that had been so misrepresented in our Western media. You know, I had friends crying because they would, one, never see me again, and that I would be killed by terrorists. And you're Jewish, how could you go there? All these things. And I went there, and nobody believes me, but I had some of the most formative, some of the most, honestly, fun. At points, my parents were like, "I thought you were studying." Anyway, fun 2 years of my life.
Give me an example.
The Syrian people understand more than most people, especially under the time of Assad and the dictatorship, that their government does not represent them. So you going there as an American, and after September 11th, just knowing that you don't necessarily have the same thoughts as your government as an American. And they wanted to know what you thought, what you were like. And also they just want to know you as a human being. Because in Syria, particularly, the hospitality culture is a huge part of the culture. So you would walk down the street as an American speaking English, and a random person I promise you, would say, "Oh, you're American." And at first you're like, uh-oh, what are they going to say? And they say, "Please come to my home. I'd like to treat you." You come to their home, they give you tea. Then you say, I gotta leave now. I gotta visit my friend. And they say, "No, you have to stay for dinner." You say, "Okay." Then they stay for tea. Then mette, which is this drink they drink in Syria. Then dessert. And then you're like, "This is amazing. Thank you so much. We just met. I need to go home." And they go, "Why do you want to go home?" "I need to spend some time alone. Just calm down." They go, "What's wrong?" In Arabic, "Shibbikinti, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? You must spend the night." And so before you know it, you've spent the night. Before you know it, you have best friends. And this happened multiple times to many of us. My closest friends are really Palestinians in Mukhayyam, Yarmouk, which is actually in the Palestinian diaspora, the biggest refugee camp. And I had so many Palestinian friends. You know, I'd already gone to grad school. I already had my understanding of the region. So there was not some sort of political transformation for me. I'd already made it. But these were just friendships that were so meaningful, and people who knew all of me. I keep in touch with these friends to this day.
When it's time to scale your business, it's time for Shopify. Get everything you need to grow the way you want, like all the way. Stack more sales with the best converting checkout on the planet. Track your cha-chings from every channel, right in one spot. And turn real-time reporting into big-time opportunities. Take your business to a whole new level. Switch to Shopify. Start your free trial today.
Mara, what led you to UNRWA? It seems like you were already on a path to advocacy and activism. But why UNRWA? Why be so specific to the Palestinian plight?
It started actually when I was in Syria. I had the opportunity when my Fulbright scholarship ended to volunteer at the Damascus Training Center, which is a vocational training center run by UNRWA in Damascus. And I got to lead the English language club there. So that was an extracurricular club for students who were technical vocational students who wanted to practice their English. And I just found a home in that club, leading that club. These were conversations with young people, men, women, a lot of laughing, a lot of storytelling, and ultimately a lot of shared values. And there were just these moments where we'd have discussions in English, you know, that we were there to study, they were there to learn English. But we could have conversations. It was not academic necessarily. I remember them saying to me, "In America, why do so many children divorce their parents?" And so these were just these moments of, again, kind of us coming together in some of the mythology we think we know about each other and breaking that down. That experience was very formative. And there was an amazing principal of that school, Fawzia Nadfa, who is just as open and warm and wonderful as so many people I met in Syria. So it had a profound effect on me. And I knew the person who headed UNRWA Syria, a Dutch gentleman, Lex Stackenberg, who I know and care for to this day. And then just UNRWA means so much, I came to learn, to the Palestinian people, because UNRWA provided, number one, a world-class education to Palestinian refugees who, yes, they were treated much better in Syria than other settings, but did not have access either through poverty or lack of nationality in many of the settings they were, or because they were in Palestine occupied by Israel. They were not able to access always a world-class, high-quality education. And UNRWA education, UNRWA teachers actually produced some of the strongest students, and many of the Palestinian diaspora around the world who have gone on to accomplish great things, whether they're urban planners in Chicago, whether they're a scientist, Loaya Basuni, who worked for NASA and helped build the first helicopter that flew on Mars, whether they're my dear friend, the Abu Hashims, who one of them went to Memorial Sloan Kettering and Cornell, has an MD, PhD, helping to cure cancer. One of them is building an app to help people send money to their families when they're in the diaspora and they need to send money to their families who are facing, obviously, conditions like genocide in Gaza. These people who were taught in UNRWA schools have, against all sorts of obstacles, have achieved so many amazing things in their careers and their lives. And despite every piece of propaganda that you and I and Americans have been fed about UNRWA's education, are the most tolerant, open-minded, wonderful people. And I'm telling you that as a Jewish person. So I think that may be one of the most motivating factors is the absolute misrepresentation of UNRWA and this malignant propaganda that UNRWA is somehow producing anti-Semitism. I know anti-Semitism. This is not anti-Semitism. And I really wish people would focus on true anti-Semitism, which is a scourge like any racism in our country.
UNRWA or UNRWA USA, which you're CEO of, is different from the UN agency UNRWA. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Can you explain the difference between the two?
UNRWA is the United Nations agency that was created in 1949 to serve the human and development needs of the refugee population of Palestinians that was created with the creation of Israel. Up till and until there was a just and durable solution to the plight of this refugee population by the political parties. By mandate of the United Nations, this just and durable solution is not the purview or the mandate of UNRWA. It's the mandate of the political parties who involved. UNRWA is the United Nations agency. Now, UNRWA USA started as a national chapter of UNRWA, just like UNICEF USA or USA for UNHCR. And it was started in 2006 as a national chapter. And then US financial regulations required that any local organization taking US taxpayer dollars, because we were meant to be a fundraising organization, but taking that money and sending it to a foreign entity, albeit a United Nations agency, had to register independently as an NGO and had to go through a process of discretion and control, meaning our board has to review and officially sign off on any funds that go abroad. And we are in no way a pass-through where we just take American dollars and they just go to UNRWA. We go through a critical due diligence review and making of every dollar that's going out, making sure that it is being spent on what is in line with our own mission. So we're an independent NGO, US-led NGO, and we've been around since 2006. And I've been the head of the organization for the last 6.5 years.
So here's something that I've heard, and I want to discuss this with you. Now, UNRWA exists because Palestinian refugees were never allowed to go back home, right? Refugee status basically has passed down different generations. Now, some people, including liberal Zionists, would argue that UNRWA institutionalizes refugeehood, that there is no other refugee population on earth that has its own permanent UN agency. Why is the Palestinian case different, in your opinion?
UNRWA was, again, as you said, it was created to address the needs of this population of refugees created by the State of Israel. And mind you, actually, in 1949, when it was created, the reason we have this weird term at UNRWA called Palestine refugees instead of the adjective Palestinian refugees is that it was for anybody who was refugeed as a result of the creation of State of Israel, whether they were Christian, Muslim, or Jewish.
But why not use the term Palestinian still? Because that would, imply anybody who was part of Palestine, no?
Yes, because there were Jews who were Palestinian, but I think it was to be clear at the time that it was for anybody who was in that state of Palestine before the State of Israel was created, whether they were Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. They were all eligible for the services if they were refugeed. And my guess is because State of Israel, Palestine was the corollary. So whoever was refugeed as a result of the creation of Israel, Palestine, people who were refugeed from Palestine, whether Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, were eligible for the services. So again, the mandate was for UNRWA to be around. It was actually supposed to be a temporary solution. It was supposed to be planned obsolescence, i.e. the idea that we would create something that should end, should no longer be necessary, was part of the creation of UNRWA. The idea, exactly as you had mentioned, was that these refugees would go home. What happened is some 77, 78 years later, the refugees have not been able to go home.
And the home is shrinking by the day.
And in fact, they've been living under occupation in the West Bank, living under Israeli control in Gaza up until Israel left Gaza. But over the last 17 years that Israel left Gaza, they were still ostensibly controlling Gaza, at least controlling the air, land, and sea under blockade. So Israel still controlled Gaza, despite what you hear, for the last 17 years since they removed their military. They've been controlling everything that goes in and out of Gaza, whether it comes in by the sea, the land, or the air. So this is a prolonged refugee crisis. And actually, UNHCR also addresses prolonged refugee crisis and also recognizes the passing down of the refugee status in certain prolonged settings, for example, Rwanda. So the idea that this is simply UNRWA that recognizes refugee status over generations is not true. I turn the question back. UNRWA should not be here, but it should not be destroyed, removed, sidelined by a country that is committing what experts know to be a genocide because it doesn't like its life-saving, hope-saving measures. It should be over by mandate of the UN when there is a just and durable political solution, and one in which Palestinians have self-determination and sovereignty over their own affairs. Unfortunately, in 78 years, we have not reached that moment. Imagine you've been refugeed and you're in Lebanon. There are 35 different jobs that you're not allowed to enter. Your way of making income is on the black market. You're in Jordan living in a refugee camp. You're one of the 180,000 Palestine refugees from Gaza in Jordan who do not have citizenship. You are in occupied West Bank. You are in Gaza. Your life is controlled by entities outside of your own people, your own nationality. At this moment, the West Bank and Gaza, the idea that you have autonomy over your own future, that there's a way for you, even as individuals, to support yourselves, is utterly false. Until that day comes, UNRWA has to be there to take care of these human beings.
All right, let's bring the conversation to 2026, right? Now, we know that there is a so-called ceasefire, and I choose those words very carefully, calling it so-called. Since October 2025, more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed. Let's talk about what it actually looks like, not from the podium, but on the ground. But give me an example of an UNRWA colleague, a family, a child in Gaza, whose story you carry with you.
I'm going to give one more statistic before I tell the stories, which is that Israel now controls 65 to 70% of the Gaza Strip. So all 2 million people that were already crammed into one of the most population dense areas in the world are now crammed into 30% of the land of Gaza. So in that 30% land area, you have tent cities. You have people living in completely dilapidated, blown out structures. Even in that 30%, you have ongoing missile fire that, as you've mentioned, has killed over 1,000 people, including many children, since the so-called ceasefire. You have rodents that were never a part of Gaza and that are ravaging through tents, not only getting food, but they are now eating through tent tarpaulin. They're eating through tent fabric, and they are biting children. You have malnutrition, malnourishment, to the point that young children are 5 times greater than any time before to be in the streets trying to find children a way to make money. And that is often by picking up scraps on the ground and trying to sell them for reuse or trying to find food on the ground that they could sell. You have and excuse me for having to raise this, you have a sanitary emergency. Sanitary napkins have been considered dual-use items by the Israeli authorities, which means that humanitarian actors have been limited in their ability to bring in sanitary napkins as humanitarian aid into Gaza because they are so-called dual use, i.e. they would be used for military purposes. So you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of women not able to access affordable sanitary napkins for their menstrual hygiene in a world in which there are very few clean bathrooms and very limited water, where people are in line to take showers, in line to use the restroom, and where restrooms aren't safe because they're in a shelter with men and women and people they don't know. This is not talked about enough. Why are sanitary napkins considered dual use? They come in through the commercial market that Israel lets in and are often astronomically priced. I know of a story that a family that had been displaced multiple times. Some families have been displaced 12 times, even 16 times, many 10 times, with just the clothes on their back. In one of those cases, we heard about a father who took the remaining clothes he had outside of the ones he's wearing, tore them into rags for his menstruating daughter. How people are supposed to live in this environment is beyond any rational comprehension. We have my colleague, Hani El-Madhoun. He's a director of philanthropy at UNRWA USA. That should have been his only job. Unfortunately, because of the incessant bombing in the north of Gaza and the forceful removal of humanitarian agencies early on in the genocide, his family developed the Gaza Soup Kitchen to feed their local community members. And they went from feeding a couple hundred families to a couple thousand to tens of thousands of people. And early in the war on Gaza, one of his brother's wife, and 3 of their kids were killed when a missile struck their house. They have nothing to be involved with any so-called fighters, or they're people just like you and me trying to make a living. And then his brother, who was running the Gaza Soup Kitchen, Chef Mahmoud, was murdered by a quadcopter that threw a grenade at him as he was trying to deliver blankets to Al-Nasser Hospital, where Dr. Abu Safia was later kidnapped from. In what world do we move on from somebody being murdered, killed in broad daylight, when their coordinates were known for feeding people, for keeping people alive? My husband and I, early days of our relationship and our marriage, just talking about our experiences, mostly we're 100% on the same page. But sometimes I would say, well, why does this thing upset you so much? And he would say, Mara, just take out whatever word is in this that's upsetting me and put Jewish person in there. Put American in there. What do you feel? And yeah, I had taken some things, even as open-minded, as thoughtful as I am, I had not felt the pain that I felt because it wasn't me specifically in that position. And so I think there's a certain, as you mentioned, privilege that comes with certain, with people who are in the majority, whether religiously in this country, ethnically, where they don't have to feel that pain and they have the privilege of not feeling that pain. I think it is incumbent upon all of us to feel that, and then we act.
Mara, what you just said, in fact, what your husband said, that's so profound, right? And that's an exercise that I think all of us should try to embody. Put ourselves in that situation. And that's something that I have been trying to do now. Because when I was growing up in Pakistan and I was part of the majority population, I will admit, I never thought of the plight of minorities in that country. I was so unaware. It was not part of my consciousness. But ever since I've come to the US, I am hyper aware of what it means to be in minority, what it means to be dehumanized, what it really means to be stripped of your humanity for existing, for practicing a religion when your religion is called a cult time and again. And I'm not talking about fringe elements, Mara, here. I'm not talking about right wing media. I'm talking about mainstream media, politicians, actors, advocates, feminists. It's so mind boggling to me that what brings America together is their collective hate for Muslim identity. And that to me is so painful as a Muslim, as an American citizen, and as a mother to two girls who were born and raised here.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks.
That is fire. Whoa, that's good.
This might be the drink of the summer.
Okay, I like this one too. I'm rocking with it. Okay.
Try it for yourself. Starbucks Refreshers Concentrates are coming home. Find them in the coffee aisle and make it yours.
Suffering from dry, tired, irritated eyes? Don't let dry eyes win. Use Sustain Pro. It hydrates, restores, and protects dry eyes for up to 12 hours. Sustain Pro. Triple action dry eye relief.
Let's pivot to something that I really, really want to get your opinion on. And I have so many thoughts, but I will hold my thoughts. The Board of Peace. First of all, excuse my language, but what the fuck is that? They tweeted something, and I'm paraphrasing it here. It really drove me crazy. Something to the effect that they are turning the page on the complexity of perpetual aid dependency. Now, they're talking about Gazans. Remember, this is a population that has no control on their own borders, sea, airspace, electricity, one of the most educated populations in the region, freelancing, coding remotely, because that's the only economy they have left open to them. So when Washington calls it dependency, what do you want to say back? Who engineered that dependency?
100%. That dependency was 100% engineered in Gaza by the blockade. And as you said, even in a blockade, the brilliance of the Palestinian young people, and so many of them educated in UNRWA schools, which were, by the way, a fraction of the cost of private schools, and graduating people with a 0.25 percentile higher on their graduation on the Thanawiyama. I actually went to Gaza in 2022. And no offense to the lovely men who I met, but the women in Gaza were stars. They were brilliant. I always say they were more articulate in English than me, and their English is not their first language. I said, what do you want to do when you graduate? I want to be a coder. Every woman, because exactly the irony is that with a blockade of air, sea, and land, the way through that blockade is through the cloud. So from remote processing, back office processing, data processing, there was a whole freelance economy developed over 2.5 years of atrocities. But I was told by many people in Gaza in 2022 that the most marriageable woman in Gaza was not necessarily who was the most beautiful, who came from the best family. It was who scored the best on their graduation exam. Because every family knew that the way out of this misery was to be educated, to be highly educated, to value education, to, against all hope and all rationality, to seek a way to earn a living, to seek a way to see the world. And you had people, again, these amazing alum of UNRWA go on to do these amazing things. So these women were just stars.
Board of Peace. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Even in this dependent nature, dependency by occupation and by blockade, mind you, and by a lack of a political solution, Palestinians thrived until the genocide and until a coordinated campaign to get rid of the organization, the institution, UNRWA, that kept Palestinians fed, educated, cared for in terms of healthcare, provided trauma support, provided shelter, provided hope, provided the idea that there one day will be a just and durable political solution and we will be alive and educated and have an income and be able to see that day. That's why UNRWA has been attacked. And to have UNRWA replaced with a so-called Board of Peace, which is nothing about peace. It's about foreign powers trying to control the Palestinian population with Israel in the lead. It is one of the most, I dare say, disgusting aspects of the vision of the Board of Peace has been this so-called Trump Riviera, this idea that capitalism alone can save the world. That all we need to do is build a couple of fancy high-rises, put in a casino and a beachfront property, and everyone will be fine. Except without Palestinian sovereignty, without Palestinian control of their own land and people. Imagine Canada coming in and saying, we're going to take care of the whole California coastline. We're going to put you all in high rises, put biometric screening around each city. So if you want to enter or leave that city, you're going to ask us. We're going to put a little chip that allows us to see who you are and whether we want you out or not. That's essentially what has been the vision behind the Board of Peace, is these high-rise cities where people, Palestinians, would be forced to move into. Other land around these cities would be taken over. There has been discussion that has not yet been, nobody's told us this is not true, that they will have biometric screening that will literally decide whether you can enter or leave that city. Again, Bantustanization, yet worse. The former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, called these concentration camps, this vision himself. And then, even in this world where there was such devastation, so many atrocities, such loss of civilian life by the Israel war on Gaza, people said, this is still better than what we've experienced. That was on the premise that there would be a Palestinian working group that would have some rights. The National Committee for the Administration of Gaza would engage in the day-to-day civil management, that there would be an international force keeping peace and stability, that Israel would not actually take over more land of the Gaza Strip, but actually withdraw. This has not happened. And I hate to say it because I hate to be cynical. I'm an optimistic person. I'm a California person. The weather's always sunny. I hate to say it, but this has been the most elaborate rope-a-dope. It's been the most elaborate system of saying to the world what we want to hear, but doing something entirely different.
And I'm ashamed to say that Pakistan is part of this.
So is Morocco, my husband's home country.
And I am pretty sure Pakistani people are not on board. It's the government, unfortunately. Other than Pakistan and Morocco, who else constitutes this board, Mara?
Yeah, I mean, there's been buy-in at many levels with other countries as well. Obviously, the U.S. is a big part of it. There's been talks in Egypt. But it was out of desperation that people signed on to this. But even the limited vision that was set forth has not been implemented. The other highly problematic aspect of the Board of Peace is it was born extra legally. It sits outside of international law. There's a lack of clarity on the mechanisms by which they would transfer money, even if there is money available theoretically by Morocco, by the Emiratis, wherever. There is no legal mechanism for the distribution for the spending of that money. Secretary of State Rubio is saying that the U.S. can spend whatever money it wants. It does not have to tell Congress. There's no transparency involved, almost as if it's a private sector organization. But this is all a theater production. It's no basis in either reality, international law. It's external to the way the UN has worked historically. And it doesn't have any notion of Palestinian self-determination and sovereignty.
So, Mara, let me ask you this. When Palestinians achieve self-determination and sovereignty, would you accept UNRWA's dissolution then? Would you be okay with that?
100%. The idea is it only should be there until a just and durable solution. Absolutely. A political solution. So when there is a Palestinian state, when there's a resolution, UNRWA, by the way, despite what people think, does not actually embody the right of return of Palestinian refugees. It represents that because it keeps the notion that there is a refugee population. It registered the 790,000 so people who were made refugee by the creation of Israel, has the papers to prove they're refugees. It is not itself a guarantor of the right of return. That is international law.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks.
That is fire. Whoa, that's good.
This might be the drink of the summer.
Okay, I like this one too. I'm rocking with it, okay?
Try it for yourself. Starbucks Refreshers Concentrates are coming home. Find them in the coffee aisle and make it yours.
Yes! Yes! A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks. Ooh, ooh, and clicks. For kids who love to save the day, choose a Lego set. A gift that always clicks.
Now, some Palestinians that I've spoken to, they are wary of the humanitarian industry itself, right? We see a lot of well-paid internationals. We see well-intentioned organizations, but a lot of them are speaking for Gaza. What's your answer to a Palestinian who says, we appreciate the money, but this is our story to lead?
I take that line of inquiry, that thoughtful response so seriously. And here is just me as Mara, my thoughts on that. The future of Palestine needs to be in Palestinian hands. The truth is there has not been a way to support the basic human needs of a population that has been made refugee and does not have a country. UNRWA is not a perfect entity by any means. Any organization of that size is not perfect. I don't know if most Americans know, it has 30,000 employees. Historically, 13,000 worked in Gaza. Now, because of the genocide, because of devastation, only 11,000 staff are on the ground. Many have been killed. In fact, 390 UNRWA staff have been killed. Many have lost their own children, their relatives. They've been injured. They've faced starvation. Some of them have left Gaza, just like others have been forced to leave. Some 98% of UNRWA staff are Palestinians. And again, that's another reason why the attacks on UNRWA. UNRWA is, by and large, a Palestinian organization. The people who are doing the work on the ground are all Palestinians. It is led by international staff, which has staff from all backgrounds, all walks of life. I'm not going to comment, despite my own thoughts on that structure. That's for my UNRWA colleagues and others to comment on. But I wish UNRWA wasn't needed. And I tell you just two last things on this subject, which are very important. I am in many different settings where I am around Palestinian-led aid agencies and soup kitchens, mutual aid societies. And my belief, and I'm sure my colleagues at UNRWA, is everything necessary, everything possible to help keep people alive is necessary at this moment. And so we can't do it alone. We do it together. And I know, if I can speak, because my dear colleague Hani again, he runs a Gaza soup kitchen. He's the director of vice president of philanthropy at UNRWA. He will say, if someone comes in and says, which one should I support? He said, yes, we are feeding people. We are Palestinian-led. We are feeding people in Gaza. But if you want to create transformation, if you want to feed people at scale, the answer is still UNRWA. If you want to take care of the health care of people at scale, the answer is still UNRWA. Believe me, I hope UNRWA is gone for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. Palestine will be Palestine-led.
I do want to bring it back to you, Mara. We've talked about hyphenated identities. That's what Immigrantly does best. You are a Jewish American woman fighting for Palestinian refugees. And the hyphen, that is the fight, right? That's the battlefield. So Here's my question to you. When this chapter of history is written, hopefully well written, what do you want it to say you did?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I've never been asked that question. And I think even to address the other question you asked, I really try not to put my ego on the line here, and that my work is only useful, and even my role at UNRWA USA is only useful in that the Palestinian community finds it useful. But I also know that my privilege gives me access to certain audiences and allows me to say, as much as I abhor this, allows me to say things that others may not so easily say. It is my duty to do this work. And I hope, and with my colleagues, with my peers, with my sister organizations, we work together to continue to transform the narratives that dehumanize Palestinians, that dehumanize Arabs, and dehumanize Muslims. And that this work is only possible when we're together in it. And that if we stand alone, we get shot down. So I want to be standing with my Palestinian peers, with those other allies. We're stronger together.
I do want to mention Gaza 5K, my city, Sunday, October 11th. Is that the day?
Right, Sunday, October 11th, that's right.
And this event has been running since 2012. I hear there is some dancing involved. Talk to me a little bit about this before we wrap up.
This event is the highlight of the year. We have been in New York every year, almost every year since 2012. Our crowds have grown from a couple hundred to last year, Saadia, you wouldn't believe it, we had 5,000 people,
wow.
Including, believe it or not, the mayor-elect at the time, Zohran Mamdani, who had run 2 years, the two 5Ks prior in New York City. We just didn't know who he was until last year.
Oh my gosh, now the world knows.
Yeah, now the world knows. But he also was, we actually truthfully did know him a little bit because he was a donor to ours back in 2022. He ran a World Cup soccer fundraising competition, and the contributions went to us. So we're going to hold this event again. We hope to have some special guests there. We're working on that. And it is really one of the most beautiful days of the year. You will see thousands of people coming out of all backgrounds, all walks of life, talk about a world that we want to see of Christians, of Jews, of Muslims, of grandmothers and grandchildren, of doggies, little doggies in kafiyas.
And cats.
Okay, cats, you have to put them in a carrier. Yes, cats are welcome. I do not intend to discriminate against cats. Bring them all. We used to have rabbits. Just be careful.
I'll put them in a carrier.
Thank you. And it really is a dare to feel joy in a world that wants you to be miserable, if not worse. And so we dare to feel joy on that day. We smile. We are filled with hope because we see the beautiful fabric of New York City come out on this occasion. And I promise you, that smile, you ask what keeps us going in these times. That smile we get reflecting off of the smiles in the crowd, that's what keeps us going all year round. And we can't wait for that day.
And in the end, Mara, if you were to define the United States of America in the context of universality of human rights, how would you do that?
Wow. I just see the promise of the United States in all of the beauty of the diversity. To me, that is the beauty of this country. In all of the Spanish speakers, in all of the people from every different country in the world, our universities filled up until recently, unfortunately, with some of the brightest and best from all over the world, from Pakistan, from India, from China. We have so much to gain from immigrants, from diversity, from different perspectives. That has what has made our country so beautiful. And honestly, every time I go back to New York City, especially the New York City in the era of Mamdani, you feel that.
Mara, where can people find UNRWA USA and how do they donate?
Go to UNRWAUSA.org, UNRWA.org, and then you click on donate. And I think the one thing I want to leave you with, and just hope. Hope is necessary. We can't keep on doing this work if we don't have hope. I want to tell everyone listening, in all this ugliness that we're facing in our country, cynicism, ugly words, the compassion and the generosity of Americans has not gone away. In fact, we have been in awe of our donor base. We had 7,000 donors in October 2023. We gained 203,000 donors. And because of the generosity of Americans, we were able to send over $111 million to the field since October of 2023, about 86 million of that to Gaza, to keep people alive, to keep them healthy, to clean their camps, to provide drinking water, to educate them. And that is a testament to the compassion, the care, the generosity, the beauty of the American people. And I can tell you, because I check every single donor name, those are people from every state in the union, and they're people from every background. That's the America that I know. That's the America that we see in so many places. And that's the America that I have hope in. And that's the America that keeps me doing this work day after day.
That's the America we envision, always. Thank you so much, Mara. This was so wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Saadia, for your lovely questions. It was a real pleasure.
I am taking a moment to let all of it sink in. Honestly, I don't have much to say, except that what keeps humanity going is our ability to see others as equals and give them the same rights, dignity, respect that we would give to ourselves and our loved ones. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please share it with a friend, a skeptic. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to Immigrantly. These conversations are important because not many people are having them. So your support goes a long way in helping people discover Immigrantly and all the conversations we are trying to bring out and let people be more aware and intentional about what's happening in their surroundings and globally. This episode was written and produced by me, Saadia Khan. The editorial review is done by Shay Yu. Our sound designer and editor is Lou Raskin. Our theme music is by Simon Hutchinson, other music by Epidemic Sound. Come back next week when we have another important conversation. And hey, if you learned something important from this conversation, DM me at It's Saadia K. I'm on Instagram and would love to hear your thoughts on this or any other interview that I've done. Take care. Until next time.